Massive game here in the AFC with major playoff implications as the current 7th seed in the AFC playoff hunt. The Indianapolis Colts host the Las Vegas Raiders, who are coming off a major upset over their division rival, the Kansas City Chiefs, in Week 16. We're going to break down the game and provide our predictions. But first, Ryan and I, we're trying to get to 2,333 subscribers by the end of the year. So we're under 1 week away. We're about 80 subscribers away. So help us reach our goal. It's very easy. Subscribe to the channel. Also, to like this video to help out with the algorithm and spread the video out in our content. Ryan, let's get into this game here. The Colts, we were actually at the Week 16 game, the Colts, as they were in Atlanta. And so I was obviously happy with the outcome here. I will say up front, we were very lucky that Michael Pittman did not play in the game because it was very obvious that the offense was limited just overall. And Falcons have one of the better defenses in general, but it was just tough for the Colts to move the ball against us here. And Josh Downs could only do so much, and there wasn't really any other weapons outside of that as well. Mm-hmm. So Michael Pittman needs to come back into this game for them to have a chance. But then at the same time, though, too, they are going up against a Raiders team who I will say they played really well against the Chiefs just in general, especially the defense. But offensively, though, like they only put up 6 offensive points against the Kansas City Chiefs team, and going to be going up against a Colts team who has a good front seven, weaker in the secondary. What are kind of your overall thoughts on both of these teams, kind of what you saw from the Colts this last week, and what the Raiders have to do to come in on the road and keep their playoff hopes alive?
Yeah. One of the things with the Raiders now that Josh McDaniels gone and Antonio Pierce is the head coach is they kind of remind me a little bit of like the Cardinals from earlier in the season, where it's like they don't have a ton of talent. They have a lot more talent than the Cardinals, but like they just play really hard now. And I think that was one of the things that was really struggling was they were not playing very hard for Josh McDaniels, and they just didn't like believe in they didn't buy in. There was no buy-in in that team before. And so now I think they're just playing really hard. And that talent is kind of coming through in some of these matchups. And I also think Aiden O'Connell and this offense, they've done a better job of running the ball since Antonio Pierce has been in charge. And I really think that that could play a role in this matchup because, frankly, the Falcons were able to run the ball really well against the Colts, which was not something I really saw coming. But the Falcons do have a better offensive line than the Raiders, but schematically, I think the Raiders could scheme up a few big chunk plays there against the Colts. And on the flip side, the Colts secondary is really, really weak. They're just very young and inexperienced. And then that front seven, outside of DeForest Buckner, I don't really know how impactful they are. One of the things that was really striking to me was just the lack of adjustments made on the defensive side of the ball against the Falcons. I felt like they were just kind of getting beat, and then they just kind of accepted that they were going to get beat. Offensively, they had the really good first drive, and then that was about it for the Colts. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's going to be a close game. It really depends on which version of the Indianapolis Colts show up for me.
Mm-hmm. That's probably, to your point, I want to talk about the running game. That's probably, if we go back and look at all the crazy things that have happened this season, that's probably one of the more shocking things, I think, is how the Raiders team went from the best running offense last year to now like one of the worst. And to your point, you're absolutely correct. Chargers rushing offense overall, 124 against the Chargers. They did put up 63 points. So it's Chargers didn't provide much resistance. But then 157 rushing yards against this Chiefs defense is actually pretty impressive, especially too since they only had 48 passing yards as well. Yeah. So 80% of their overall offense, or 80-ish percent, if I'm doing the math correctly. But that's almost kind of where if they'll go and watch that Falcons game is if they can establish the run, they are much more dynamic in the receiving room as well. The Raiders with Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. Hopefully, Michael Mayer comes back. Even though Austin Hooper, I think, had an okay performance overall. they'll be able to exploit that Colts secondary even more than I think the Falcons were able to. Even as well, Julian Blackman for the Colts went out with a shoulder injury, so his status needs to be monitored as well. But I agree with you, though. Ever since the firing, they've just been playing so much harder for Antonio Pierce. I hope he continues to stay the Raiders coach. I think he's done a phenomenal job and just giving that team hope and life coming into the season. What's going to be interesting, though, here is if Michael Pittman doesn't come back, and just watching that game, like there's not really much else that offense can do because they're Max Crosby and company. They're going to put 8 guys in the box. They're just going to stop the running game. And there's not really anybody else in that receiving room. And I like Josh Downs a lot, but he's more your possession guy. He's not going to be the guy that you go and try and burn corners down the field. There's just so much that Colts offense can do as well. And I'll actually push back a little bit on your point you made to the I think you're referring to the Raiders about them having similar overall talent as the Cardinals, or were you talking about the Colts?
No, I said they remind me of the Cardinals from early in the season when they were getting these wins by fighting hard, but they're more talented than the Cardinals. They're a lot more talented than the Cardinals.
Okay. I misheard you. I thought you said that they remind you of the Cardinals because there's not much talent, but they keep fighting hard. And I was like, I'm just looking at their roster, like you got Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Max Crosby is one of the best edge rushers in the entire league. Really like Robert Spillane, that linebacker for the Raiders. I think he's had a phenomenal year. Trayvon Moehrig as well. I think always seems to kind of be finding his way around the field. And so it's going to be interesting here. But then that being said, they are also going to Indianapolis, where Indianapolis plays significantly better at home than on the road. And with this intense matchup, they're going to want to try and keep obviously that 7 seed as the Colts do control their destiny. So let's get into our predictions here, though. But before we do that, as I mentioned earlier, trying to get to 2,333 subscribers, about 80 away as of right now. So it's very easy. Just subscribe, help us reach our goal, and then we have a bunch more content coming out in 2024. So you want to be able to see that and see all of our mock drafts, all of our off-season content as well. And so, Ryan, let's get into our predictions. Who do you have winning this game and why?
So this is really tough because I do think the Colts do play much better at home. And the last time we saw them, they hung 30 on the Steelers without Michael Pittman because he got injured in pretty early into the first half of that game. But I do like the Raiders. I think they're the hot team. They're coming off the 63-point performance against the Chargers and then having that tough, hard-fought victory against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they're coming in here with more momentum, and I think they get this one done against the Colts. I really was not impressed with the Colts in last week's game. They just kind of got manhandled by a Falcons team that starting a new quarterback, and maybe that gave this offense a little bit more energy. But I just thought that they would put up more fight than they did, and I just wasn't super impressed with that. And I think you look at what the Raiders were able to do. I think they'll be able to get after Gardner Minshew, which the Falcons definitely did. I do think one of the things I mentioned earlier that's really concerning for me was just the lack of adjustment made by the Colts on Sunday against the Falcons. They just kind of were getting beat and then just accepted it. And so I think there's some maybe injuries preventing them from being more versatile on the defensive side of the ball, but just not as good as I think that they would like to be. And I think the Raiders get this one done here.
I like it. I'm glad you went with the Raiders because I am going to go with the Colts here on the stipulation that Michael Pittman plays, because Michael Pittman does change things a bunch just for this team overall in this overall matchup here. So I'll have a little bit of stipulation there. But one of the things, though, too, if you look at that Colts defense and how they just had too high safety for majority of the time, and you're right, they didn't make any adjustments. But especially against a team that can run like the Falcons, they need to make that adjustment, drop one of those safeties into the box just to try and slow them down. With how poor the Raiders team overall has been running the ball throughout overall the season, they've run the ball better, especially than two against Kansas City. That was the only thing they could really do against them. I think that almost that style of defense is going to work better because they're going to want to keep Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers in front of you, while Josh Jacobs, who did not play this against the Kansas City Chiefs. In general, though, I think that they'll be able to continue to put pressure on that offensive line, which is weaker. And I think that they'll be able to slow down this running game just a little bit, while then hopefully preventing the big play from Devontae Adams or Jacoby Myers. Now, that being said, if Michael Pittman doesn't play, I don't see how the Colts score, because I think the Raiders are going to do what the Falcons did, and they're just going to put eight guys in the box. And you really only need to just rush your guys normal 4 with Max Crosby, and then what's the gentleman's name? It's said his name a bunch, Malcolm Kuntz. So I think, I mean, they were saying his name all day against Kansas City. Same with Max Crosby as well. So I'm going to go with Indianapolis here, actually on the road, keep their playoff hopes alive, and actually send the Raiders packing and not make the playoffs here. So it'll be very interesting here. If Michael Pittman plays, it'll be a very interesting game. If not, I will very quickly change my pick to the Raiders.
Yeah. So we disagree on this one. You're going with the Colts if Michael Pittman plays, and I'm going with the Raiders. Let's go ahead and wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe and leave a comment down below on who you think is going to come out ahead in this matchup. Will it be the Las Vegas Raiders? Will it be the Indianapolis Colts? Other than that, we will see you guys next time.